if my computer, there we, let's see. All right. Yes. Yes, let's let Denise in. Okay, sorry, talking to myself because I'm talking to my computer. Okay, welcome to the first technical committee meeting of 2021. What I'm going to do is we'll let everybody introduce themselves, but in order that we have some order to it, I'm going to call out names and then you can introduce yourself. So starting at the top of my list, Brian, go ahead.
Brian Hoffman, the Deputy Director of Friends of the Rappahannock and the coordinator for the Rappahannock River Roundtable.
Deirdre.
Deirdre Clark, Director, John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District, serving Fauquier County.
Okay, staying in the Upper Basin, John McCarthy.
John McCarthy, Senior Advisor with Piedmont Environmental Council.
All right, and Dave Evans.
Evans, a non-point source coordinator for DEQ Northern Region.
And a new joiner to the group, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Gary Rapecki, Director for Fauquier County Parks and Recreation.
Welcome, Gary.
Howdy, Gary.
Let's try Brent.
Brent Hunsinger, Friends of the Rappahannock, State Posse Coordinator and River Steward for Middle River counties.
Denise.
Denise Nelson with the Berkeley Group, representing GWRC and Middle Peninsula.
All right, I'm just making sure somebody just emailed me and needed the credentials. Hang on. All right, Jason.
Jason Bellows, Lancaster County and Chairman.
John Lower Bateman.
John Bateman with the Northern Neck Planning District Commission.
All right, moving back to the middle, Marta. You're mute. Unmute, Marta.
Marta Perry, District Manager at Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie Bloomstrom, Piedmont Environmental Council, and I'm the Rappahannock Rapidan Conservation Partnership Coordinator.
All right. Tyler.
Tyler Gellis, City of Fredericksburg, Senior Stormwater Manager and the Environmental Planner.
Okay, Mike Craig. Mike, you're muted. Okay. All right, all right, now I've got some phone numbers, so I'm not sure who they are. So we're gonna, let's see, here's an Upper Basin number, 540-672-2542. Mystery guest, sign in, please. Maybe they don't know their phone number. Okay, next phone number, 804, wait a minute, 633-3499. I'm not doing very well with these. Okay, and I'm going to try Mike Craig again. All right, my screen says Mike's with us, so hopefully when his time comes to talk, he'll be here. And your time is coming soon, Mike. Anyway, thank you everybody for this wonderfully awkward way of conducting business, and it's nice to see everybody, or more or less, and looking forward to another year. All right, so Mike Collins is one of those phone numbers, and he says I'm muting him, so I don't know. Mr. Mike Collins, I am pushing buttons saying unmute, but doesn't seem to be working. So,
Hey, Alden, this is
yes.
Maggie. Sometimes folks on the phone on Zoom calls have to push *6 to unmute. So if he wants to give that a shot. Not
Okay,
sure if it'll work.
there you go. Folks who are connecting voice-wise by phone, *6 to unmute. Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Mike, Craig, I got you.
We did it, guys. Mike Craig with the City of Fredericksburg. Here to
Okay.
talk to you all about the next show today. Thank you.
All right, you're up in just a second, Mike. Brian, do you want to say a little something about this array of 6 items that we're going to projects, activities that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, thanks, Eldon, and everybody who is on the call today and agreed to contribute overviews of various work products that are happening in your region. The Rappahannock River and Rapidan rivers provide a myriad of recreational opportunity, angling, paddling, tubing, birding, as well as Riverside trails for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other things. And we have a nice network owned and managed by the Department of Wildlife Resources and several other public access sites owned by a municipality. Some that come to mind, City of Fredericksburg's Old Mill Park access, Stafford County's Little Falls access, Fauquier County's Riverside Preserve access, and there's more. And probably beginning around 2012, we started to try and identify more access sites. 2009, we produced a big watershed trail map with the National Park Service through their Bay Gateways program, and really try to find ways to increase people's connection to the rivers. It creates better river stewards. Maybe it'll help the more connection they have to those rivers, it'll help them not throw stuff out their window quite as much as Chairman Bellows was bemoaning in his county. And I know we share that sentiment throughout the region. And it made sense to kick this meeting off, the first meeting this year of the TAC off, highlighting a lot of efforts that are well underway, soon to be high five successes through new funding acquisition, shovels in the ground, and maybe some ribbon cuttings happening up in Fauquier and Culpeper counties, City of Fredericksburg and Stafford. And then in a subsequent meeting, we also have a lot of great work that was launched last year in river trail websites from the Northern Neck Planning District Commission and Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission that provide excellent resources for folks wanting to get out on the river in those localities. So tapped a few folks who are leading some localized efforts to put new water trail or new river access sites or bankside trails in studies that are going on, grants that were awarded recently. And I think we got almost everyone. Tom Turner from John Marshall Soil and Water recently retired from the district to go to the private sectors. Congratulations to him. But other than that, I think we got the full suite of folks here to highlight the local work.
Brian, this is Deirdre. Can you tell me a little bit about what's happening at Phelps?
Yep. Eldon, I know that's on the agenda. Did you have a specific order you wanted to go through?
Well, what I'd like to, actually, we don't have to go a specific order, but for the sake of our presenters, we might want to do that.
That's fine. I'll be hanging in here.
Pardon me? Say that again, David.
I said that's whatever you choose to do is fine. I was just hoping for an update at some point.
Yeah, I can give my best.
On the
I can give a best update on that. Then there may be other folks that can contribute once we get there.
Okay, thank you.
Let's start with Bankside Trail in City of Fredericksburg. Mike, take it away.
Thank you all. And if I'm able to share my screen, let me see.
Okay, hang on. I'll Yeah. All right, give it a try now.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let's see if that does it. And let me do one more thing here.
Looks good.
And can you guys see the presentation now?
Yes.
All right. So again, I'm Mike Craig with the City of Fredericksburg. I've been working with the city now for 6 years, and we do a lot of city planning. We aren't the first group to have done this in the city. It's an ongoing tradition, and we're lucky. We've had a history of strong city planning, urban planning, and so Tyler and I stand on the shoulders of giants, and we're at a point right now where some very exciting things are going on. And I think the first thing to highlight for this group is that we are River City. It's part of our core identity. It factors into, it's one of the most important factors in any plan that we do. And the project that we're currently undertaking that we've been doing now for 5 years is a series of area plans within the city, breaking the city down into 10 sections and hyper focusing on land use issues and infrastructure issues. We've done 4 plans now along the riverfront, and that's not an accident. Identifying our river resource and making sure that the planning is up to date on that is a huge priority, and certainly factored in the decision to prioritize most of the riverfront in terms of our planning. And what I've got on the screen here is something that we want to complete. There is a lot of this network in place now. That yellow line is a trail that starts at the western end of the city and terminates at the southeastern end of the city, whereby someone could traverse the entire riverfront, the Rappahannock. It's not all paved. It's not all multi-use paths. Some of it's recreational, especially in our western areas of the city, and we want to keep it that way in some areas. We've got 2 basically riverfronts. So if you're looking west of Locks Island, really west of 95, it's designated scenic river. And the goal there is to ensure that that when people are on it, that experience of being on a scenic river is maintained. No encroachment is seen, but that there are passive recreational activities and access and all the good stuff that people like to do is provided for, including canoe down through the falls. We have a strong mountain bike contingent in the city that utilize that area. But I'm here to tell you more about our urban interface with the river. One of the bigger, if not the biggest, urban interfaces on the Rappahannock is right here in the downtown. You see several notations: Old Mill Park, Canal Street Wharf, Riverfront Park, City Dock. These are all points at which the city touches the river. And we've got a core historic urban area, and you see a red and blue line. That's a portion of a trail connection that we will build off street along the river that we're focused on now, and we call it the Bankside Trail. Not new planning. Again, we've been working on projects for a long time in the city. This is a artistic concept that was created in 1984 by a group named EDAW, E-D-A-W, and they did a look at the area where the Bankside Trail is proposed, and it's a work of art. I love this illustration. I almost wish they built it then, because I think the laws have changed since then. The Riverfront Park in the city is shown at the northern end. So it's actually the southern end, but it's the top of your screen. And that's under construction now. It's going to be completed this year. If you haven't seen it, come into town and take a look. But then as you move north, but actually down the page, you see a trail along the river's edge. And that, again, is phase 1 of the city's Bankside Trail. That's what we're focused on right now. The elements that I think are real cool, there's like a rock bridge shown where they just like dropped rocks in the river, and people were going to, hold their kid and jump from rock to rock to the island. And Tyler tells me that that's totally illegal. We can't do that anymore. And it was never built. So the point of this is that, this visioning along our riverfront, to have a more active engaged riverfront in this area has been a long time vision of the city. The downtown area plan boundaries are what you see on the screen. They encompass the historic core. They encompass some of our older urban areas on the fringe. We're working on maker districts and other things in those areas. The train station is in here. And this is a page that shows more of what we are working towards in implementing our bicycle pedestrian network. The green arrows are bicycle boulevards. You'll see a lot of those in Richmond. Dedicated bike lanes are certainly a core piece of that. And again, the red and blue line is a bankside trail that would be off-street, separated from the street, recreational in character, but also serving as a critical link between the black and purple lines, which are our existing trails. We've got a fabulous trail network, just happens to be disconnected. And so a lot of our effort here is to connect all that. We also have a trail that's being constructed now from Ferry Farm in Stafford across the Chatham Bridge. And this piece of the Bankside Trail that's circled in yellow is a critical link in joining that piece of infrastructure to the historic core, to our other trail networks, and into the historic downtown. So that's all kind of the background, what we're trying to achieve. That yellow circled area is what we're focused on. If you see a star on there, it's something called the Old Stone Warehouse. It's a early 19th century, if not 18th century, warehouse that faces the river. People see the back of it and think it's the front, but when you get down to the river's edge and you look back at the building, it's almost a religious experience to see what people used to see, which was the front of the building actually facing the river. So show you our concept plan for the Bankside Trail, something we've been working on, and it's been updated, but this is still a strong concept to illustrate the scope of the trail. So to the right of your screen, just off the screen, is the Riverfront Park in the city of Fredericksburg, currently under construction. And we've got a wide sidewalk network that was actually built through DCR grants as a result of that EDAW plan that I showed you. So some infrastructure was implemented. But then you start to see a green path, and that is phase one of the Bankside Trail. So there's a slope to traverse in that area, and we're paying close attention to ADA compliance there. And then you're going along the river's edge there. The Old Stone Warehouse is the entity that you see, the last building before you get to the Chatham Bridge, going from right to left. We will also have a crossing of William Street that you can see. It's the ladder crosswalk that will take you from that trail that connects Ferry Farm, Falmouth, and Chatham Manor into the city, a new multi-use path. And it will then, that switchback that you see will take you down to this system. Then the trail continues north, which now is left on the screen, and gets you closer up past Amelia Street towards our canal trail, our Virginia Heritage Trail. A little bit about the project schedule and where we are. Right-of-way acquisition is ongoing. We have several partners in this process. One are a lot of the property owners along the trail. They have declared an interest in getting this trail completed, and they've been very helpful in creating that concept I showed you, and also are working with us on providing access for engineering and construction, and are talking about providing right-of-way as well. There are some folks that are not willing, or so far haven't stated willingness to give right-of-way, so we need to purchase some right-of-way. We are the fortunate recipient of a Virginia Outdoors Foundation Preservation Trust Fund public access grant. Thank you all very much for any support. Friends of the Rappahannock was critical in securing that, and we're moving forward with acquiring right-of-way now with that grant. Engineering and permitting. Phase one, we want to set everything up to comply with the NEPA process, National Environmental Protection Act. We think that there will be a federal component of funding. We're trying to pull as much funding from as many different sources, and we think that eventually we will be working with VDOT and using federal funds. So we wanted to do our preliminary work in accordance with any guidelines that we might meet up down the road. We have an environmental report from Timmons Company There are no wetlands along this route. They've delineated the edge of the stream. We're looking at the tidal range. This is the tidal section of the river to ultimately determine how the jurisdictional map lays out, because we are talking about doing shoreline armoring along the route of the trail. Cultural resources, got a report from Dovetail. They worked with Timmons Group to generate that. Very historic area of the city. So the first lots that were subdivided in the city, lot 4, 5, and 6, are now the route for this trail. And there's been a lot of activity there, but most things have been disturbed over time. There's a heavy layer of deposit from the river. So in the end, our cultural resources study didn't find any new archaeological sites, which is a good thing, so that we can keep moving forward with that. We are in phase 2 now. We're looking to procure engineering for a grading plan. That's our critical path, erosion and sediment control, and we need to establish a final trail alignment so that we can finalize our acquisition. And that's where we are. That's consuming our daily life right now. And once we've got that in place, and I'll explain a little bit why we're taking more of a stepped approach, the final trail, the application of the asphalt to the earth is the last piece. And that one can wait. That one isn't as critical as the grading and erosion and sediment control. And I'll show you this just to give you a sense for the work that's going on along the river. That orange line would be a shoreline armoring component. There's retaining wall elements that will go on here to make sure that the grade works. And then there's a significant grading component towards the left where you have to climb back up. There's a lot of topography here. So minimal disturbance, but there is this type of work that needs to occur. And the opportunity that we've got, this is actually me standing in the middle channel of the Rappahannock River. The Chatham Bridge, which you can see at the top of the screen, is under construction. As part of that construction process, the contractor and VDOT have built a causeway out of a lot of tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of stone. This is 12-foot deep of stone material in order to build that structure. And one of the strategies that we're hoping to deploy is to utilize this material to armor the shoreline where the trail will be close to the shore in this area, and take advantage of the construction that's occurring there, maybe achieve an economy of scale. So critical path is to see if this is viable. It would go a long way towards ensuring that this project continues to move forward. Finally, we'll do construction, and we wanted to line that up with phase construction schedule. When they're pulling out of the Chatham Bridge project, we want to be ready for them to just move the stone over to the edge and put it in place, and then they can pull out of their project, and we've achieved what we need to, and that will occur in late 2021. Then we would apply the final pieces, the amenitization of the trail, plantings, and the final asphalt coats onto the trail in 2022. And that's a brief picture of where we are with the Bankside Trail. I really do want to emphasize how important it is to have partners like the Virginia Outdoors Foundation working with us. It's a big deal, and it's going a long way towards us achieving our goal here. And I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Mike, thank you very much. Any questions for Mike?
This is Pat Cody. Mike, was this financed in the capital budget, or what kind of financing elements did it have?
Right, yeah, no, it is. It's in our proposed capital budget for this year, but we are pursuing grant funding. We want to do pass-through. It's not envisioned right now to be a capital expenditure strictly out of the general fund, though, maybe that's an option.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, if somebody thinks of a question later on, Mike, if you hang with us, somebody may come up with something else as they hear some of the other projects. Now, after my comments about following the order on the agenda, I'm now going to throw that away because I got a note from Mike Collins in the Upper Basin that they have got some stuff going on and he's not going to be able to stay with us. So I'm going to jump the agenda and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Collins. And Mike, you should be unmuted. We can't hear you. Maybe we won't do this. Okay. Mike Collins, try again. Okay.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Hello?
Okay, Mike, we heard the instructions. Are you there?
You have
Okay, I'm
not
not sure what
entered
happened
any
there.
numbers.
This
Please re-enter your meeting ID
What is
followed by
going on?
pound.
I love this.
Are you guys hearing all this embarrassing stuff?
You have not entered any numbers. Please
Um,
re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Hey,
All right, I guess I'm gonna.
Mike,
You want me to?
we-
Yeah.
we're hearing you and we're hearing the instructions. If you want,
Goodbye.
I'll give you the numbers to punch in.
I've got them in front of me. I just don't know why I'm doing it again. Hold on a second.
We feel like we're watching CNN or something.
Well,
Okay.
that
Give it
seems
a
to
try,
make it
Mike.
happy. All right, so I'm just brief. We'll be real brief. We have for about 5 or 6 years been talking about public access up here in the Orange, Madison, Culpeper area, and years ago, just a broad group of folks decided that looked at Robinson River, looked at Rapidan River, and decided that Rapidan was the place to go just because of low flows on the Robinson. And so we honed it on 3 potential sites, Liberty Mills, Spicer's Mill, and Madison Mill. The total distance there is about 10 miles of river, about 6 miles, 7 miles from Liberty to Spicer's, and 3 miles from Spicer's to Madison. Madison is on Route 15, just north of Orange. And so I guess a little over a year ago or so, we got a little bit of funding from Orange County, from the town of Orange, and from Madison County to do a feasibility study. You know, as a paddler, and I guess probably many folks who are on this call are paddlers, you know, access points are sometimes, you know, in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes they're around areas where there are houses and people. And all 3 of these sites are in the category of around houses and people. And that just makes, you know, the due diligence that's required to execute something like this, you know, significant. And so that's where we are. We are in the process of doing due diligence. We've been in that for a year, and it's continuing. What that has led to is removal of the Liberty Mills site. And so now we're down to 1 put in at Spicer's Mill and 1 takeout. And again, that's a 3-mile river trail. You know, concerns are typical ones about traffic, vagrants, safety. The Spicer's Mill site is directly adjacent to the town of Orange. Water treatment plant, wastewater infrastructure. I don't actually think that, I thought that was going to be, or we had reason to believe initially that was going to be a pretty big deal. Doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. An interesting opportunity at the Spicer's Mill site is that there's the old pump house, which is privately owned, and the gentleman that owns that, as well as the parcel of land where we have an LOI with him to put in a put-in site, he also would like to have the pump house be renovated for an environmental education center and maybe an apartment on the 2nd floor. This gets into issues, of course, with septage, and so, you know, we've been talking to the health department, DEQ, about this, so this has been folded into another aspect of the due diligence. It's a complicating factor, but it's what the landowner, you know, wants considered in the, you know, due diligence phase for that Spicer's Mill access point. The other one at Madison Mill, you know, there is landowner support there. There's significant landowner support. That is on the, by the way, the Madison County side of the river. Spicer's Mill is on the Orange County side of the river. The concerns with the folks that are not outright supporters of the Madison County location is poor visibility with law enforcement, the fact that the location is right on the edge of, it's on the border of Madison County and Orange County, and so there's concerns that law enforcement will not regularly investigate it, and even if they do, there's trees blocking view sheds. Of course, you know, some of this can be mitigated. That's part of what we're looking into in terms of, you know, how we can begin to satisfy some of these concerns, or if we can satisfy the concerns. Then just general, you know, concerns about just having too many cars there, blocking driveways. The Madison County site, if you've never been to Orange, it's on an old highway bridge, the old Route 15. That site is already owned by VDOT, and you know, and we're not planning to stray from that easement. So it's not a matter that technically that the trail has to traverse private property. It's just a matter that, you know, as far as we're concerned, we're not going to, you know, try to push this if there is consequential landowner concern, you know, from landowners that are adjacent or almost adjacent, you know, to these access points. I think that in terms of sort of the time frame for this, we will be able to resolve much of the due diligence in the next 6 months or so, and so we'll know a whole lot more towards the end of the calendar year. I was hoping we could wrap up the study by the end of this calendar year, but just with some of these sort of issues that have come up, you know, that's probably not likely, and I think we're now looking at finishing up sometime in 2022. So that's where we are. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions for Mike Collins? Mike, thank you very much, and hopefully you can stick around. But what we'll now do is Denise Nelson will now get back on the agenda and Denise is going to talk with us a little bit about the Greenway study on the George Washington Regional Commission.
May I share a visual?
Just 1 second.
Just so you don't have to look at me talk.
You should be able to now.
Wonderful. Thank you. I want to do just the, okay, I'll do that. And I'll just move all this stuff. Just get my screens organized. So last year, GWRC applied for, oh, I had a lot open, hold on. Applied for Greenway's feasibility study grant from DOF through the Urban and Community Forestry Assistance Grants Program. They had 6 or 7 options in the grant RFP, and there was one for Greenway's feasibility study or something like that, and they were only giving one out, $20,000 with a 1-to-1 match, and GWRC won it. So we're very excited. We started discussing the details last year. The grant runs September to September this year, but you know, there were some challenges with stakeholder meetings and other things last year, staff turnover at GWRC. So now we have we prepared this initial map of bike trails, sidewalks, any other thing that we would want to be aware of when it comes to planning for greenways, and sent it to the Fredericksburg area. FAMPO has a committee called BPAC, Bike and Pedestrian Committee. And they vetted this. So the localities vetted this and agreed on what's existing. And they are very excited and prepared to work with us on moving forward. So BPAC meets every other month, and we're going to keep those meetings, but we're not going to dominate them with this feasibility study. What we've scheduled is to have 3 meetings basically with BPAC and maybe a broader expanded audience 3 meetings specifically to discuss the Greenway study. And those will be, we're about to release them publicly, but in the evening, just like BPAC at 6 p.m. But we're looking at April 29th, May 19th, and June 24th. And the idea there is the first meeting, we focus on pretty much the people that come to BPAC. So the locality, the staff level people at each of the localities, and then all of our partners. Oh gosh, there's so many. The Fredericksburg Trails Alliance and everybody that you can imagine we've got on our roster to include. And then the May meeting, we want to include those people, but then also the tier up their department heads, their locality and county administrators, city managers, maybe even some board members, to get that higher level. We call them advocates, to get their support and buy-in for what we're doing. And then the third meeting, we want to invite all those same people and go one step higher to the potential funders, which again, we could go to the state agencies, but we can bring in other people that fund trails work, the NGOs, the nonprofits. And so our goal there is to use those 3 meetings to, get the technical criteria correct and get the buy-in from the communities, the support, the approval, and then go public. And so in about July timeframe, we'll be doing a community survey and community outreach, and making sure that the community has time to review and comment on the plan. And then kind of button up the plan, finalize it, take it to the GWRC board, the FAMPO board, the localities, if they're interested, their planning commissions or whoever the right board is, to get their approval or endorsement. And then we have August and September to do that. I know sometimes the conversation takes more than 1 meeting, and we'll have a lot of people to hit if they're interested in having us. And then September, we wrap up the study, finalize it, and make it available to everybody to incorporate. We put it on the website, and then we write our final paperwork for the grant. So I was very excited to hear about everything in Fredericksburg. Mike Craig and Tyler Gellis has maybe been holding out on us. He comes to my stormwater meetings. But I assume that you guys are on the BPAC roster. So I'm representing GWRC, and Carrie Barber from FAMPO is really the lead on this project. And she's already been the BPAC lead, so she knows everybody. That's why I can't tell you off the top of my head who's on the roster without opening it up. So do you have any questions, comments, suggestions?
Questions for Denise? Okay. Folks think of them, we can address them later if Denise will hang around. Let's move to the Remington River access, and Maggie will take us through that one for PEC. Maggie? You're on mute. Uh-oh. Maggie, are you with us? All right.
Okay, bye.
There you go.
Hello. Sorry, another public access project crept up. Hello, I am going to talk to you about the public access in Remington. So just a quick update, since Gary's on the call and he can fill everybody in on it. But the Piedmont Environmental Council was awarded $20,000 from the Virginia Environmental Endowment to pay for materials and supplies at the public access site in Remington. So that's very exciting. Hopefully it will come pretty close to closing the gap of what funding might be needed to buy those supplies. We are also in talks right now with Vulcan to see if they might be able to donate some of the gravel, the riprap, and really make this a true community supported project. You know, of course, this was done in tandem with Brian Hoffman at Friends of the Rappahannock, John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District, Parks and Rec, of course, and really championed by the Board of Supervisor, Chris Butler, in that area as well. It's been a long promised project, and it's very exciting that hopefully by spring or summer, it'll be open to the public.
Wow, spring or summer, cool. Questions for Maggie? All right, keeping with the Fauquier County theme, Gary, you want to talk to us about the canoe slide access at Riverside Park?
Sure, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'll step back for a second and talk about Remington real quickly at the Rector Track site. We have the plans in. We just provided comments on them. So once the A&E firm addresses those comments, we'll send them to community development for approval, which I've been told will be kind of a rush. And the goal would try to build this in May or June timeframe. We're also doing a tree planting out there with the Friends of Rappahannock who purchased the riparian plantings this Friday. So we'll be doing that, and hopefully the rain will hold off. But it's a really nice passive park. There's a couple of very historic bridges nearby. It's just going to be a very beautiful, well-loved and well-used park out there. Probably our biggest problem is going to be having enough parking, but that's not a bad problem to have. Now the plans for Riverside Preserve. Riverside Preserve is just outside of north and west of Warrenton off of Leeds Manor Road. We have about 200 acres out there that was donated on the Rappahannock River. Culpeper County's on the other side. It has these real tall cliffs and real nice hemlocks there. Very scenic area. We have the plans in community development right now under review. Department of Wildlife Resources have approved them. We have a signed MOU with DWR now to help build and maintain the kayak canoe launches, the kayak canoe launch there. And our goal would be to hopefully build that one late April, early May, depending on when the weather breaks. We're working with Ron Hughes on that. It's going to be a very simple step down with a slide in the middle of the stairs. We're staying out of the water itself, so we don't have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers for a lot of permits. And down the road, we envision a different area where we could have ADA access to the river, because the grades are much more conducive to that farther down, but we're going to be applying for a grant for that. The Friends of Rappahannock have given $4,000 for the Riverside Preserve kayak canoe launch, and the John Marshall Soil District has given us $2,000 to help go towards that. So that's been very beneficial as well. So I'll take any questions if anybody has. Once I get approved plans and stuff like that, I can have some handouts or give you some more updates, but I don't like to give things out too soon until they're ready to go.
Questions for Gary? Excellent. Gary, since we're going to kind of repeat this again next week for the full commission, I'm going to try to catch up with you sometime tomorrow to chat a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay. With that, let's move to Brian, back to Brian, to talk a little bit about the River Ambassador Program and some update with some of your public information work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I can just give a brief update on the Rogers Ford public access in Fauquier County. So this is the easternmost portion of the Phelps Wildlife Management Area, owned and managed by Department of Wildlife Resources on the north side of the Rappahannock River in Fauquier County. From the early stages of the discussions of Upper Rappahannock River Water Trail Partners, this was identified as low-hanging fruit because it was already owned by the people who manage the largest network of public access sites in the Commonwealth. And after a couple of site visits with different folks who are familiar with that area of the river, a couple ideas were put forward for a site on the river. The grade was right, the river's width was right, and it was just a matter of finding a good way to punch into the WMA from public roads, balancing costs and conflicts with neighbors. And once the good plan was put forward, the John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District put a grant application into the Path Foundation, which was subsequently funded. I believe that was in the neighborhood of $25,000. That was funded in 2020. And as Gary kind of mentioned, some of the, instead of let's get the money and go build it, turned into let's get the money and have an engineer at DWR review it and approve it. And some of that can be cumbersome and extend the process. But my understanding from Ron Hughes, who's the facilities manager for the region, is that they've identified the area, they've got some approvals in place, and the road that they have to construct, maybe 3,000 linear feet of new road, will connect to some existing road and get you down to the river. It will be, and then the canoe and kayak launch there itself. So without a firm answer, my best educated guess might be late summer, fall is when we could be high-fiving about this. But again, when the wheels of local and state government are turning, there's always the opportunity that something else might come up. But this is downstream from Kelly's Ford. And what we see as just an incredible resource would be that Remington to Kelly's Ford to Rogers Ford connection, all in Fauquier County on otherwise underutilized portion of the river. Because right now, Kelly's Ford to Mott's Run, I know myself and Mike Collins and a couple other people have done that stretch a number of times. You know, that's every bit of 30 miles, and you do camp overnight, which is excellent, but that's not going to keep it open to a large number of folks. Anyway, the River Ambassadors program, right there in the city of Fredericksburg, you had that wonderful presentation from Mike Craig. Stafford County is the locality to the north of the city there. And for a long number of years, they managed Falmouth Beach as a open and public park. It's a sandy beach, which encourages an awful lot of people to come in and stick in an umbrella and a cooler, and you can wade in to the river there. It is, that's below the fall line, so it's tidally influenced. Very easy to walk in and a great place for kids to play. However, due to a number of different circumstances, having both those parks, excellent parks right on either side of the river there, you get thousands and thousands of people accessing the river there. There's a lack of public education about river safety and just the conditions of the river that you don't know are there just by looking at it from the surface. We have Stafford County Fire and Rescue patrols the river and responds to rescue scenarios. And I don't have that number off the top of my head. It was in a grant application, but it is not insignificant. And that is very expensive when they respond, but there's no dollar amount that's not worth saving lives. But we do have drownings every single year. In 2020, we had 3 that were very avoidable. We had 2 kayakers launch when the river was overflowing and swelling and flooded, and they did not have life jackets on. And it took all of about 5 minutes for that one of those people's kayak to overturn, and they were they didn't stand a chance. We have youth that are playing in the river and don't realize that the tide comes in at the same time water's flowing from upstream, and they get sucked underneath. You don't realize that what might be 2 feet of water can turn into 8 feet of water with a downed mature sycamore tree underneath it. The anglers know that's there because that's where the good fish are. And people get their sandal strap caught on those things with a tide that's pulling you under. So we're seeing 3 to 5 deaths that can be avoided with proper personal flotation devices, some education. And in that spirit, Friends of the Rappahannock submitted a series of grants and recruited some partners to launch a summer river ambassador program that's going to focus heavily on river safety education. We're partnering with Defensores de la Cuenca. I apologize if I butchered that, but they are defenders of the watershed. It's a national environmental watershed nonprofit that's focused on Spanish-speaking populations and turning your normal outreach and education material into bilingual resources. And that's going to be working very closely with the city's watershed property manager, River Network, which is another national nonprofit, both the City of Fredericksburg and Stafford County Parks and Rec, DWR, American Canoe Association, any organization that has a stake or interest in river safety, promoting environmental education, that type of thing. And the Dominion Foundation was our first grant that's going to enable us to hire 2 individuals from May to August, which is the highest use of those 2 Riverfront Park areas, both fluent Spanish speakers, to be in canoes, to be walking on the parks and beaches, provide life jackets where they're needed, go up and have conversations with these people about maybe you don't have the second beer if you're going to go swimming. Did you know that the river is actually 10 feet deep in the middle right there, even though you can wade into your knees? And we're hoping to have a zero fatality occurrence this year. We're hoping to have people sign up for river cleanups and guided canoe paddles and river safety training. That those folks are driving down from Prince William County in Northern Virginia, and they don't have the normal access to the programs that Parks and Rec puts on and Friends of the Rappahannock puts on there. And these would be specially tailored to those park users who are missing those education opportunities for themselves and their kids. So that's still ongoing with the development. It's definitely a grassroots-led initiative that was fueled after some unrest and due to some of the fatalities that happened in the city there last year. So we're hoping that this will be a good program.
Questions for Brian? Okay, everybody should have just gotten an article that David Nunley shared about paddling adventures around Caroline. So if you've got any questions for David, don't hesitate to speak up. With that, thank you. There's some really neat projects going on, and for folks who like to get out on the river, there's some tremendous opportunities. And for those who just want to be beside the river, certainly with the project in Fredericksburg, looking forward to that. And Denise, I saw in looking at your map of the region, the Dahlgren Junction Trail, I think that's what it's called, that is the old railroad. And that is a perfect example of something that's been kicking around for 35 years. Because when I worked for King George County, we were talking about that as a possibility. And so it's nice to see these things come to fruition all these years later.
I'd like to add, I don't think Chris Clark is on the line. I talked to him yesterday. About 2 years ago, Berkeley Group did a Trailways study for King George County, looking at their sidewalks, trails, the bike routes, especially the bike routes that are on the roads that are lower speed limit. And we made some recommendations and took them to the board, and there was a hang up, there was some discussion, and the board ended up never approving the study, and I think maybe even forgetting about it. So Chris dug it up in preparing for the Greenway's feasibility program that FAMPO and GWRC is doing. Chris dug it up and is going to take it to the next to the next King George Board of Supervisors meeting, which was either last night or tonight. So yeah, things take a while sometimes, and we're moving forward.
That's good. That's good. Good to hear.
Eldon?
Go ahead, Deirdre.
This is Deirdre. At this point, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how much John Marshall appreciates the help from Gary, Brian, and Maggie in working with the county and the district to facilitate access to the Rappahannock. When you mention ancient history, we've been talking about this for 100 years, and it's amazing the work that they have done in a very short period of time. So thanks to those guys and everybody else who's figured in the equation. Thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. With that, I'm going to shift gears and talk just a little bit about the General Assembly session. Everybody should have received the preliminary summary of key bills that we prepared, and we'll be hearing from the legislative members of the commission next week at the commission meeting to talk about some of them. And I just want to highlight a couple, and if folks have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. You had pretty significant legislation on tax credits for agricultural best management practices. It's House Bill 1763, which is the very first bill on the list, and its Senate companion SB 1162. Of course, that was patroned by Emmett Hanger. But certain of the best management practices that are required as part of a certified resource management plan will have an enhanced tax credit equal to 50% for the first $100,000. And that's a big deal on top of the funding that was included. And when the state does something like this, they actually go in and calculate what that means in terms of lost revenue, and that's actually factored into the budget as well. It's not just, oh, a tax credit and let's see who applies. They actually take it off the top in the budgeting process. So it has the effect of almost of a direct appropriation when it comes to adopting the state budget. The second bill on the list is HB 1819. Another one of our commission members, Delegate Joshua Cole, carried the bill to designate 79 miles more of the Rappahannock River going down from the middle basin, from where the bridge, what was called in the olden days the bridge to nowhere. That only for people who've been around long enough will remember that. And from there, the eastern in Stafford County, all the way down to the Middlesex County line. It doesn't pull in the whole river because the Middlesex board wasn't supportive. And the hope is that as time goes on, that will change, and you'll see an effort to take the designation the rest of the way. The study that DCR did that's required as part of the process is posted on DCR's Scenic Rivers portion of their website, and I encourage anybody who hadn't looked at it to take a look at it. Might be worthy of discussion in the future to talk about what the concern was in the lower basin, and I'll just briefly mention it so that people understand. The concern that came up was that lower portion of the Rappahannock is clearly a working river. And the folks representing waterman interest were worried that the designation might threaten their livelihoods. I personally don't agree, but it certainly, from their perspective, was a legitimate concern. And I think it's a worthy topic of discussion as we all go forward. So let's see, I'll move on. You have HB 1902, which prohibits the polystyrene food service containers as of July 1, 2023. That was a rather controversial bill to get passed. There are some exemptions in there. There's some opportunities for localities to work with their local businesses to temporarily delay the implementation to as late as 2025. That was all part of the compromise that was worked out in order to get the bill passed. Let's see, I'll jump over to HB 1983, which you have on page 6, which allows for stream mitigation bank work in a larger geographic area than is currently allowed to deal with projects that cannot acquire mitigation because of the lack of availability. And this really grew out of, I think, some projects in the Stafford area. It was a compromise worked out with all parties, and everybody agreed that this was necessary for economic development reasons. And the solution was felt to be one that was not compromising from an environmental protection standpoint. The Bay Foundation, James River Association worked with the development interest, and that bill moved forward. Let's see, a very significant piece of legislation on the wastewater side, HB 2129, and its Senate companion, really lays out the enhanced nutrient removal, what they called a certainty program. It is set out in a list all the wastewater projects that need to get done or get underway between now and 2026 in order to meet the WIP 3 targets. And this was backed up with significant appropriations, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. This bill took a couple of years of negotiation between, again, all the parties, development interests, the municipal wastewater folks, the Bay Foundation, James River Association, and the administration. The Secretary of Natural Resources office was, and DEQ were in the middle, trying to work through all the compromises that went on to get the final piece of legislation. Pretty significant piece of work. By coming to the assembly with everybody on the same page in support of it, the legislation had a few tweaks going through the process, but by and large, it passed overwhelmingly. I'll call your attention over on page 12 to Senate Bill 1343, which was a Fauquier County bill, and it provides a proprietary records and trade secrets exemptions under FOIA for carbon sequestration agreements. We found in trying to stand up the pilot in Fauquier to carry forward with our Healthy Watershed Forest project, couldn't get a deal done because the county could not protect the proprietary information of the aggregator. And the aggregator said, I'm not doing that. We've got intellectual property involved and they're not moving forward. The interesting thing was in 2017, That same issue arose on solar agreements, and an exemption was worked out with the Freedom of Information Advisory Council, and the General Assembly overwhelmingly approved the exact same exemption for solar agreements. And so this was a matter of just adding 3 words to that existing exemption, or carbon sequestration agreements, or maybe it was 4 words. Once Fauquier County had spent time explaining to folks why this was necessary, I think that we ended up with 7 no votes or so in the House of Delegates. Otherwise, all 140 members of the Assembly supported it, and the administration supported it. And Secretary Ring actually gave testimony on a couple of occasions in support of the legislation. On page 13, Carbon Sequestration Task Force was established, SB 1374. And this is really to bring together all the parties to develop recommendations for the Assembly. What are other things that the state should be doing, either in terms of direct activity or in terms of enabling legislation to promote greater access to carbon sequestration activities. Over on the next page, page 14, SB 1396 creates a on-site sewage indemnification fund. This is something that's been talked about as needed for years, that when lower income households have a failed septic and they have to move to an alternative type system, they just can't afford $30,000 or more to move to an alternative system. It's put the health department in a real bind. How to, do you condemn somebody's septic system and force them out of their house? And the health departments had to work for years to try to work around that. But ultimately, if the system has to be replaced, it has to be replaced. Well, this is the first step in actually creating a mechanism where the state can assist with that. We'll have to be working for finding funding sources as we go forward, but at least now we've gotten the authorization, the health department's gotten the authorization from the Assembly to move that direction. And the next bill on the list right behind that one, SB 1404, dealing with the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund. If you remember, the commission had made some recommendations about the fund a few years back. We weren't successful in convincing the Assembly or the administration at that point that that some changes needed to be made to make the fund more accessible. Well, we're kind of reaching that point where we're moving in that direction. This authorizes the DEQ in managing the grant fund to look at projects and evaluate the fiscal stress of localities when determining the match requirements. And this is much the way it's done with the wastewater funding projects. So that's a move forward with SLAF. Just a couple more to mention. You had a major effort to try to work to give localities additional authority to protect trees and require replacement of trees in development. The final compromise was you see a piece of legislation that says that's going to happen. Well, it really doesn't happen. The meat of the legislation is directing the Secretaries of Natural Resources and Ag and Forestry to convene a stakeholder work group to propose, develop recommendations for on the whole topic area, both for state action and local action. So look for more to come in that area. DCR is also going to be, has now been directed to, and there's a mistake in that, the invasive species study that DCR is to conduct. That's HJ 527. The status line there is incorrect. That passed. That's a resolution, doesn't require action by the governor. So where it says governor's action deadline, just strike through that. Let's see, anything else I want to raise? I'll mention solar. Last year, the Assembly gave localities another option in negotiating with solar developers to use a host agreement approach, which is very similar to what was done for solid waste 2 decades ago, maybe 3 decades ago, maybe. And it was limited to just in opportunity zones. There are like 7 or 8 counties that in the short time it's been on the books have utilized it. It's worked well for the counties, it's worked well for the solar companies, and it's worked well for neighbors because it's allowed a true negotiation to go on where the solar developer can actually address specific issues or concern unique to their site or to the community. So popular, in fact, that the General Assembly has really liked it, and they've now expanded and made it statewide. It's no longer will, as of July 1, no longer be limited to just opportunity zones. So I think that's an improvement in terms of local authority. And with that, let's flip over to the very last page. This is significant. This indicates an investment in water quality and related, a dollar investment by the state that's probably the largest I can remember. You've got $100 million that's been invested to back up that legislation I talked about the wastewater treatment plants. $100 million for WQIF funding on the wastewater side. That's in addition to the $50 million that was already in the budget, that was adopted in the budget as it was adopted last year and amended in the special session, the COVID session. The DEQ estimates that the total cost to implement that legislation that we talked about that has all the priorities of the wastewater facilities statewide, that the state, the WQIF obligation will be somewhere around $300 million. So this budget by itself funds half of that. That's a really big deal, folks. You also have $65 million for ag best management practices, and that's in addition to the tax credit that I talked about, legislation I talked about earlier. $25 million for stormwater local assistance fund. An additional $10 million in technical assistance for the soil and water conservation districts. Deirdre, Marta, you know, and we've come a long way. Remember how we used to go up and down every time the economy went down, you lost staff. You know, we remember delivering the message, guys, you can't keep doing that because it takes years to build back up the relationship between the soil and water district and your farmers. And knock on wood, we seem to have cleared that hurdle, at least with the current General Assembly. And thanks go a long way to some members of our commission, Emmett Hanger, Mike Weber, who have been real advocates for this. Deirdre, do you want to say something? Okay.
No, not at this time, but as you sort of implicated, yeah, it's about time.
It's about time. Yeah, there you go. So, and you see a couple other things on there, including the last bullet, $290,000 to Department of Forestry to purchase equipment so that they can expand operations at the Augusta Nursery. We're at the point now where if we start talking about planting trees for carbon sequestration and for water quality improvement relative to Chesapeake Bay TMDL, Department of Forestry cannot meet the demand. And so this is the first step to rebuild their capacity. And discussions are going on whether to reestablish the productivity that used to exist in New Kent County at their operation there, which really has been allowed just due to lack of investment not be viable. So this is a step to turn that around. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer questions if anybody's got them.
Eldon Pat Cody, just quickly on the last one. I'm curious, are there certified private nurseries that provide capacity, or do any of the other counties or jurisdictions have nurseries?
I can address that. Piedmont Environmental Council and Friends of the Rappahannock run a fairly significant tree planting program. Just in the last month, we've done about 40,000 trees planted this spring, and we source as much as we can from the Department of Forestry in Virginia. But the species that our landowners are requesting that are being written into plans by the Department of Forestry, they can't grow. And as an example, this year, nobody's got elderberry because last year and the year before, elderberry weren't doing too hot from their reproduction standpoint, so there was no seed. So if I want elderberry, I bought 3,000 elderberry from Georgia because that was the only place that had it. And the Middle Peninsula in Matthews County has a nursery that I've purchased material from before. And there are small operations, nothing that's on the same playing field as Department of Forestry's nursery. And actually in the narrative portion of the whip, there was a call to increase the production of silviculture, horticultural, and forest products that are grown in Virginia by Virginians so that people like me can buy that product and material from Virginia. So all of the tree sapling nurseries in Virginia combined are really not producing at a scale that we need to meet the WIP goals.
Other questions?
Eldon, I have a question about, this is John Bateman. I have a question about SB 1210, the permit fee schedules, DEQ to revise current schedules for certain water withdrawal permits. Do you have any more information about that bill and which water withdrawal permits they're targeting? It's on page 10.
All right. Yeah. What's going to happen is, as with so many other things that went on this year, much like the trees, et cetera, DEQ is going to be putting together a working group to develop recommendations for them. So they're going to be bringing together the stakeholders and what I would, and I don't know if Dave Evans is on, I don't know if Dave can speak to this. John, if you've got an interest in it, we need to, I don't know who the chief point of contact is at DEQ on this one. Dave Evans may know or may be able to find out for us, but it's the type of thing that if you have an interest in it, you might want to get plugged in at least to follow the work of the working group. If not, get yourself appointed to it.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm just curious of what the interest in water withdrawal permits is with this.
Well, now 1210 is dealing with solid waste. Oh, and certain water withdrawal permits. You're right. I'm sorry. I had mainly focused on the solid waste side of that one.
Yeah,
So,
it's just a curiosity. They say certain.
yeah.
I was wondering which ones they were thinking of.
Good question, John, and I don't have the answer for you. And Dave, are you listening? Okay, we'll John, we need to query DEQ on that.
Yeah, I'll do that. I have an additional question if I'm allowed the time.
Go ahead.
Well, it's not so much of a question as it a comment. On site sewage indemnification fund, It seems like we're moving to fix a problem that we don't really know the extent of. And, you know, we need more data on what septic systems we have, how vulnerable they are, you know, where they're located at. Are they low-income folks? I mean, I know from anecdotal evidence of our administration of the septic pump out program that most of these failed septic systems are owned by people that don't have the funds or means to fix them. But it just seems like we're getting a little bit of the cart before the horse a little bit.
VDH has been struggling with the records, you know, for decades. The person that, do you know, wait a minute, give me a second. Marcia Deegan?
No, I don't.
Okay. Marcia in the central office is a person worth talking to. She's been working on this from the inside for years. If you follow the history of VDH and funding, if you look over the last 30 years, you watch their funding, state general fund support go down, 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 down. And so they've just never had the resources to address this issue. They've made multiple attempts to try to improve on their record database. And, you know, a lot of it's in the individual health department's paper records, and it's a real problem.
It reminds me of the effort in 2018 when the General Assembly asked the VDH to explore the transfer of septic pump out authority for the 3 regions. And what came out of that draft report that came out of that was that the health department desperately needed more data to be able to come up with recommendations for implementing such a program. So it's very similar cart before the horse. And, you know, our PDC work group, the WIP PDCs have a work group, and we've been discussing the issues of on-site septic and trying to elevate it to a level, really to the General Assembly level, to really look at and explore and gather data on what we have. I know the Northern Neck Planning District Commission worked in 2000 to digitize all of those physical records. And we'd like to see a pilot program here to ascertain how many septic systems we have, where they're at, and what their vulnerabilities are. It's just a matter of getting the General Assembly interested in collecting that information.
Well, it's taken years to get this piece of legislation passed. You know, we just have to keep working at it, John. I agree with everything you just said. And this is nothing new, you know. Other questions, comments? Okay, with that,
well, Eldon, just since this time today was focused so much on recreation and infrastructure facilities, it's worth noting that a couple grants are open once again. I believe the VLCF has a round 2 that it's available, and the DCR RTP funds are imminent in their announcement of an RFP, both of which are directly applicable to the localities who have a project that is ready for design, engineering, or implementation, and one or more of those grant opportunities has the ability for some acquisition as well. And it does require a public entity, and it does require perpetual access to the public for whatever infrastructure or properties are involved. I don't see, Maggie probably has the most experience, or someone from the city who just wrote one of those grants, but yeah.
Maggie had to drop off working on another access project.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, Our meeting schedule is listed on the agenda. Our next meeting is April 21. John Bateman, yeah, you're still with us. I'd like to work with you and with Denise, who had to leave, to kind of do similar to what we did today for the Middle and Upper Basin, about some of the public access and recreation projects going on down in the lower part of the basin.
I'd be happy to work with you to do that.
Okay, all right. Of course, the commission meeting, virtual commission meeting, is coming up next Wednesday. Folks all here have probably seen the agenda. Those who presented today are going to do a repeat performance, and I'll be reaching out to them. I think the commission needs to hear these very same projects. We're also going to we're putting together a panel that's going to talk about some of the significant state actions that I just highlighted. And that panel will include Ann Jennings, Deputy Secretary. It will include Peggy Sanner with Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I expect, I haven't been able to connect with Senator Hanger, but since he was a key patron both of the tax credit bill and of the significant wastewater prioritization upgrade bill, and a key player in the budget negotiations, and to just kind of talk from, and Chris Pomeroy with the Municipal Wastewater Association, to talk from their different perspectives about the significance of the legislation. And we'll obviously hear from our members of the General Assembly giving their perspective on the General Assembly session. And Mr. Chairman, anything you want to add for the group about next week's meeting, or anything else for that matter?
I don't think so, but I was really excited to hear all the new projects going on in the district, and I think these are going to be great for the commission. There's a lot of great opportunities here.
And
after many years that things are finally moving forward in a judicious way.
Yeah, agreed. And John Bateman, I put you on notice that what I want to do is we're going to talk the next technical committee meeting about the projects in the lower basin. Our June commission meeting, if we're able to have it in person, is supposed to be in Richmond County, and it'd be an appropriate time to reprise what we do at the next technical committee meeting for the commission on those lower basin projects. And we'll hope that things keep moving in the right direction, and maybe we can all see each other in person June 23rd. With that, any other comments or questions or anything for the good of the order? Anybody on the line here today?
I would just offer, as always, that if the commission or the TAC has any interest in going out on the water, whether it's by powerboat or canoe or kayak, you just say the word and we can organize that. And it would be particularly easy at one of the water trail access sites in the northern neck, since it's flat water.
Now, do you have a drone, Brian, and you could take us virtually on the river?
We do. Two of our staff just got their FAA certification so that we can operate our drone commercially. And that's stealing some news that I was going to give to John and Louis, that we can build that into help with their promotion of their water trails.
I believe Friends also created some on-water videos for some of the waterways here in the Northern Neck.
Okay. All right. Well, let's think about what we might be able to do there as we go forward. We may not be able to get out of our houses, but at least we can imagine and do it virtually. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, Pat, did you have something?
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Have a green beer.
I got my green.
Okay.
I see you got yours, Pat. Yep. All right. Very good, everybody. Have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. It's great to see everyone, and see many of you next week.
Thank you, Eldon.